welcome to our special edition of The Smartest Moron, where today, it's Christmas! Okay, it's post-Christmas. You know what, screw it. The game I'm dealing with technically does take place on Christmas Eve, and then all the way to New Year, so it still counts. Hopefully. Maybe. Look, I managed to put out an episode. I think that's enough. That is freaking progress right there. But what could I possibly review on this holy holiday? That's right. More horror games! You know, that's not very Christmas related, is it? For those who don't know, Parasite Eve is a game back in the PlayStation 1 era before Square merged with Enix and constantly shoved Final Fantasy XIII down our throats. Surprisingly, this is Square's first M-rated game since at the time, they were still making Final Fantasy games, which didn't have too much blood or violence in them. Nonetheless, there isn't too much backstory to this game. Square did bring in American staff members to help work on the game since it was set in New York. However, the game is actually a sequel to a novel and movie written by Hideki Asena. I actually saw the movie, and it was weird. Very weird. I honestly didn't get the last bit until I played the game, and it's not necessary to see it to enjoy Parasite Eve. And while Parasite Eve is a horror RPG, the movie came across as more of a drama. There's also a manga adaptation, but I haven't been able to find it online. Still, that's sadly all I have to say, aside from the fact that there were 2 other games, and Third Birthday helped make sure the series was never going to rise again. But for now, let's dive into this Christmas special. This is Parasite Eve. Yes, I know it's post-Christmas, but you confuse me with someone who cares. Now then, Mr. Editor, are we gonna have any problems? Good, then let's go with Parasite Eve. Being in the horror RPG genre, I can already sense you thinking, wait, isn't this just gonna be like Koudelka? Well, kind of. Battles take place in limited spaces in the actual game environment, which is pretty damn cool, although fights trigger in certain spots sometimes, and you face off against various creatures affected by the mitochondria, and are warped into vicious, killer animals. Or silly. Very, very silly looking. And unlike Koudelka, even normal fights can actually be pretty damn hard at times if you don't level up or maintain a check on your gear and your inventory, which can quickly get filled. However, they can also be perceived as easy given how much the game loves to throw healing items at you. And then the cycle of fighting enemies to gain stuff repeats again, thus the game loses its sense of horror almost immediately. This is not helped when you can easily rack up a ton of ammunition, and I never ran out of that or the healing items for that matter. There are a wide variety of guns and such you can take advantage of, from pistols, to grenade rifles, to regular rifles, to machine guns, shotguns, and even rocket launchers. Each gun has specific ways of being useful. For instance, machine guns are reliable for shooting at fast rates, but suffer from eating ammo faster and sometimes being stuck with a random target indicator. And rifles, while powerful, are slow as hell. This is where customization comes in and becomes incredibly useful. For instance, I love using pistols because they are quick, and by using tools throughout the game, I can apply the effect of a spread shot given by a shotgun, thus hitting multiple enemies at once. However, they can also make guns useless, such as elemental shots. Put one on your gun, you might as well pray you find another gun because they are useless against certain types of enemies. Moreover, you have a limited amount of tools, so you need to be careful. There are melee weapons too, but due to the short range, they are mostly useless aside from stealing stuff. The reason the game is hard, however, is because you can barely move, thus can barely dodge. This is where paying attention to the enemy becomes incredibly useful, otherwise you can get hurt a lot. What also doesn't help? Being confined into a hallway with cheap-ass enemies. BP can be used to increase the speed of the active time bar, allowing for faster turns, more inventory space, or even the stats of your guns and armor. While I always crave for more space for items, turns out that was kind of a mistake, as increasing the stats of gear was the way to go, so you can have an easier time dealing with monsters. You know guys, this inventory system can actually teach a life lesson. That we shouldn't just let things like, junk and all that other crap just weigh us down when it's just preventing us from progressing in life. Like, for instance, say this book bag full of projects and textbooks that I don't even need anymore, but I keep around because I still need them. I still need them like freaking hell. You can't take these away from me. Oh, that's it, isn't it? You're trying to take them away from me. You want me to fail college. You don't want me to make these videos anymore. Well, screw you. I'm keeping these no matter what. I'm leaving! But yeah, item management sucks like you wouldn't believe. Very often you find yourself backtracking a level just to dump off some good stat gear for future safe usage, and my biggest gripe is the junk system. You occasionally get items simply labeled as junk, and these can be traded at the police station. Once you gain 300 of them, it can give you one of the best guns in the game. Due to limited spacing, however, this can take a very, 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 very long time. It's tedious and not worth the freaking hours I have to sink into the game. Yet you may want it, because once you gain access to a New Game Plus, not only are enemies stronger, but the Chrysler Building opens up. This is where you may throw the controller to rage, because each floor is random, barring the floors where old and new bosses await, and not to mention there's one floor where these annoying freaking squirrels are so freaking deadly they're impossible to dodge. Your real reward for beating this insanity is an alternate ending, but we'll get to that in the spoiler section. However, I will end that while the gameplay is challenging, it really disconnects me from the environment, particularly when finding items. I don't think real museums and zoos have grenade launchers lying around. Some may see it as minor, but it honestly takes me out of the game when it isn't integrated well. Even Kodelka managed to do that better with its items. Well, mostly. Those frickin' scrolls! To say the plot is weird is an understatement. It all starts with our protagonist, Aya Brea, and rookie cop, out on a date at an opera. And as a woman begins to sing, something about her catches Aya's eyes.
Oh my.
Not like that, you perverts. It's because the singing woman is now making people combust into flames. Huh, looks like she's trying to flame the trolls before they do it to her. At any rate, Aya doesn't take this bullcrap for long and eventually tries to attack the monster I'll now dub as Eve. While Eve manages to escape at first, Aya eventually chases her down, killing all sorts of rats and birds twisted into demonic creatures that apparently shoot fire. Eve eventually explains that's the will of the mitochondria breaking free or some crap like that, and that's how she's able to light people on fire or turn animals into vicious monsters. And she states that Aya has the exact same power as well, as seen with her being able to heal and not combust into flames, and actually being able to use the power of guns to kill these creatures. With Eve on the loose and Aya occasionally seeing a little girl from time to time, the race is on to destroy Eve and save New York from the new foe, all with the help of various people, such as her partner Daniel and the socially awkward Japanese scientist Maeda. Square Enix is mostly known for involving magic in their RPGs, yet surprisingly, there is technically no magic present within this game. In fact, it all deals with science, explaining what mitochondria is and trying to give reasonable explanations for the phenomena occurring. It works a bit 50-50. Probably because the word mitochondria doesn't really strike fear, or is just too long, but that's just a personal gripe that shouldn't even be a gripe. No, the real problem are the enemy designs I just went over and how silly they can be. Other than that, the game also tries to make more human characters and gives more reasonable explanations. For instance, the chief scolding Aya about telling the press it was a strange creature called Eve when she had no proof, no other witnesses, and would just cause panic if she did state that, which she did. Or hell, just how Daniel acts in general whenever his family's involved in this kind of stuff. The characters manage to be engaging enough that the story remains interesting. The only real problem I have is how obviously evil Clamp is and how he only does things for the sake of science. This is really not helping the portrayal of scientists in fiction. Barely a character in him to boot.
Now some of you are probably asking, what is mitochondria and moron? Can you please explain it? Boy, did you come to the wrong channel if you were expecting science.
Okay, I suppose I can attempt to try and explain the concept of mitochondria as best I can. Be warned though that I pretty much suck with science. The game already explains how mitochondria is used to help us produce ATP, which is what helps us get energy for our cells. They are also linked to some disorders and cardiac dysfunction, even the aging process, and the latter may explain the whole monster thing in the game, as well as the material Eve uses from dead bodies. The game's story seems to follow the theory of symbiogenesis, explaining how the mitochondrial plastids represent free-living bacteria that, oh for the love of God, okay, look, I can't explain this anymore without falling asleep. Here's what you need to know. Mitochondria is apparently a separate organism, Eve is a highly evolved form of that, and wants to enslave and use us. There, that was a simpler explanation. In terms of what I can talk about for spoilers, there isn't too much to comment on, especially as I'm trying to make these videos smaller. So let's focus on the most important characters in this game, Eve and Aya. Eve could be perceived as stupid at first. After all, rather than burning people, she could use them to infect others and maybe become like the Thing, right? Well, not exactly. Believe me, I was thinking the exact same thing, but the mitochondria doesn't behave like the Thing. If that were the case, the game would be over already. Rather, she uses the killed human she has to not only give birth to the ultimate life form to help take over the planet, but to also bring back dinosaurs. In short, she's only able to create these creatures because she's using like dead human cells or something like that. Now, as for not killing Aya, it's revealed in the ending that letting her live and fool around with Eve was the perfect plan. Even after you do that pain-in-the-ass chase scene, which makes no sense considering Aya was doing just fine surviving getting shot at with lasers and such, that Aya's power eventually overtook her on a grand scale, becoming more powerful than Eve and gaining the power of control. Yeah, her high preaching can get annoying, and she probably could have been a bit more subtle, but she's also on the clock too. In short, Eve was actually a pretty damn smart and a good foil to Aya. Aya herself though, well, I found her a bit odd at first as I replayed the game. When it comes to strong female heroes, I don't really picture Aya standing among them, at first. This is mainly because of her actions a few times in the game that can be perceived as, well, stupid. I think the height of it all was when she would willingly enter the carriage with Eve and have a boss fight on that. Seriously, what the hell did you think was going to happen? Then there are also other problems, such as her lack of putting pressure on Clamp when he is obviously the bad guy, and of course the standard, just shoot the damn lock off a door and proceed that way. But as I kept trying to figure out, it's because Aya is clearly not someone like Jack Bauer or some other anti-hero that uses torture to get what they want and are seen as the good guys. In the end, she's human, and she goes out of her way to make sure she remains so. Hell, she practically pushes people away from her when she realized she could turn out to be exactly like Eve, which is what happens in the standard ending of the game anyway. Plus she's still a rookie cop to boot. However, her support really does help out. Daniel comes off more as a good partner for Aya, sticking by her side without any trace of it being a romance, which is freaking refreshing. While having to often be calmed down by Aya before he ends up strangling people, he has provided enough moral support for Aya when she feared her own power. Hell, when Aya was about to get killed in the final battle, he jumped from the helicopter, combusted into flames for a while, threw the special ammunition at her to kill the final boss, and landed into the no doubt freezing waters, and lived. Even more awesome, he punched a Fox News reporter. Glorious. What was I talking about again? No, right, her support. Really not much to say at the moment aside from the fact that Aya can definitely be seen in a more heroic light than other anti-heroes that have grown popular over the years. Oh, make no mistake, she'll kill without questions against such creatures like Eve. But at the end of the day, she's still a cop, and more importantly, still human. That's often a mistake normal humans who gain powers in some form of media, where they end up letting the power take over and become a full-fledged bad guy, or are just irresponsible while trying to be a hero. Her fear of losing control is justified with not just Eve, but with herself. Aya's abilities are massively varied, and perhaps the most important one, transform into a strange creature that can move fast enough to strike enemies quickly and with incredibly powerful damage. Moreover, you as the player cannot even control it. Practically no boss can survive the onslaught, and even if they do, they are hanging only by a thread. The only really gripe I have is the continuity of the endings and how they flow together. And of course going through the Chrysler building itself. Oh, and squirrels. I hate squirrels. Unless they are Squirrel Girl, or Makoto from BlazBlue, or a cute little squirrel that wants a french fry from me, I don't want to see them ever again.
So, how does Parasite Eve hold up? Decently, but in terms of horror, not really all that well.
When compared to the likes of Koudelka, Parasite Eve easily has more stuff to do within the game, but the extra dungeon at the Chrysler building will probably drive off other people due to its insane length, and there are certainly a lot of basic elements that could take you out of the flow the game is trying to give. Still, it can offer a decent, if frustrating, challenge, and it remains fun to try and keep customizing guns to make the most powerful weapon imaginable. And the story, while slightly silly given some of the sound effects and the look of some creatures, does manage to stay entertaining with a likable cast of characters. Sure, there's the occasional contrivance, but it can at least be forgiven due to Aya's own nature. Personally, I'd rather play Koudelka again because that certainly has a more interesting story to it, but Parasite Eve still manages to remain a good game that has endured the test of time.
I'm the Smartest Moron, and thank you for joining me this holiday season. Hopefully next year will be a hell of a lot better for this channel, for video games, and for all of you watching. Thank you, and happy holidays.